if you see this, I'm going to make sure. Let's see if we are, there I am. How fun is that? All right, so I'm going to have, because I can't see your comments here, so I'm going to put the little thingamajiggy there. That way, if you're here, come on and say hello. Hey, everybody. Oh, no, there goes the volume. All right, let's turn that down. So thank you for joining me today. This, I will be honest, I wasn't sure that this is where we were going to go today, because there are so many really important voices and things to be considering and listening to and exploring right now, that I had to really think about whether or not this idea of tweaking your mindset to reset and thrive was of value in this moment and the right moment to share it. And what I decided was that it is. And here's why. When we get to understand our mindset, we have we have to go inward, and we're going to talk about what that means. But we have to go inward, and then we have to begin to examine our feelings, our perceptions, our thoughts, our judgments. And that's what we need to start doing the things that are so very necessary, not just to reset, but also to do better, right? To do better as individuals, to do better as a collective. And so that's why we're moving forward with this. So thank you for joining us. If you're here, say hello. If I look off to the side, it's because my phone, where you are all hanging out on Facebook, is there. So I'm going to look for your comments and your hearts and your thumbs up and your questions there. Okay. I'm not, watching some YouTube thing. So I am delighted to have this opportunity to chat with you today about mindset. And I want to just give you a sense of where we're going. We're going to kind of define mindset for ourselves, and then think about how it shows up, what are some examples that everybody kind of knows and thinks of. And then we're going to talk about how to do a mindset audit. To use a very tax term, right? A mindset audit, to begin to get to know what your mindset is and get to know those thoughts, those patterns that are showing up for you, and how perhaps you think your mindset is one thing, but then your actions and the little whispers of your brain might lead you down a different path. So once we do that audit, then we'll think about what are some tweaks that you can make. And I'm not talking like complete tweaks that are like light switches. I mean, well, here's the thing. Even the smallest tweak can be life-changing. I've experienced it for myself. And so it's just like when we used to change the dial on a radio station, right? How do you change that frequency just a little bit so that your mindset is even more tuned in to what you want it to be? Okay, so that's where we're headed. If you have questions or thoughts so far, let me know. And I am also going to spend a few moments at the end just chatting about any questions that you might have in regards to the upcoming Sunrise in Your Pocket live retreat, which really takes all of this work of mindset and blasts through the walls that perhaps our former mindsets have created for ourselves, right? So let's talk mindset. What is it? Why is it important, right? So mindset is the self-perception or the attitude that you have about yourself. I would also offer about the world and about others. Okay, so I was first introduced to mindset way back when my last name was different. When I was a classroom teacher, and our principal during the summer always had us read a book that then would become the theme for the year. And the book was Mindset by Carol Dweck. Now, this had an educational perspective in terms of fulfilling the potential of ourselves, but also in our students. And In this book, Carol Dweck talks about a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And I just want to read to you a small excerpt. So she talks about these two mindsets and what this means to you. So she says, believing that your qualities are carved in stone, the fixed mindset, creates an urgency to prove yourself over and over. Whereas the growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts, right? And so she approaches this idea of mindset from the idea of fixed versus growth in terms of what do we believe about ourselves and about others and how we can nurture or transform or grow. One option is to state, nope, things are static. This is how we were born, how we were raised. That's it. And this right now in this moment is so important, right? As we are figuring out how to show up better, not just for ourselves, but for our communities and collective. This idea of undoing the things that we believe are fixed in our brain as a part of our patterns, right? To the idea of growth, as she said, that it's something that you can cultivate through your efforts. Give me a heart if you believe that you can cultivate things through your efforts, please. Right? So that's one kind of lens on mindset and the differences, fixed versus growth. I would offer you that you've been hearing about mindset or thinking about mindset forever. Whenever anybody talked about, are you a glass half empty or a glass half full person? Or are you an optimist or a pessimist? Are you somebody that focuses on abundance versus scarcity? So many of you have heard the story, but I'll share it briefly that I'm an awesome mindset coach with my husband to get him out of his scarcity mentality and into abundance. That's how we ended up in this house. Somehow that's how I ended up with my car, right? This idea that things are fixed or it's scarce, that there isn't enough. Or can you start looking at things from a possibility or from the lens of what might be possible? Not being irresponsible, but what might be possible, and removing those glass ceilings, right? And so I'm really good at coaching my husband. And I'm going to say I'm really good at coaching a lot of people about their mindset. But that's kind of the framework. So I'd love to know what questions you have so far about this idea of mindset. And I'm going to see if I can see any of your comments or thoughts so far. 8 comments. Hi, Natalie. Hi, Holly. Hi, Emily. I now see everybody. So I'm going to apparently have to go back and forth between here. All right. It is very good to see you all. Thank you for being here. Okay. So here we are, right? We kind of have this framework for what mindset is. And I would offer that really mindset is everything in terms of transformation, in terms of how you show up in the world. It is all about our mindset. Our mind creates our realities. It does. We are natural born storytellers. And so the thoughts we tell ourselves are the things that we then believe over and over and over. And then our brain looks for evidence of those thoughts to prove that we were right. Right? So the question is, what do you want your brain to be looking for evidence for? Natalie says, I don't have a question, I have a comment. Thank you for helping me change up my mindset a bit. It led to an amazing opportunity. You even stopped to celebrate. All right. Thank you, Natalie. Awesome. I'm so very excited for you. So we have this idea of kind of how mindset shows up in our life, right? That it is very much a part of who we are. And I would offer you that much of our mindset, that those self-perceptions, those attitudes come to us over many, many, many years, right? From our families of origin, from our communities, from culture, from society, from the media. We learn the shoulds, the expectations, and our mindset then is formed or molded a bit around that. But what if we believe that we then had the ability to decide what our mindset was going to be? Well, before we can decide, we have to know where our current mindset is. Okay. And so this is where I'm a believer in doing an audit. Now, this is something you can do a little bit every day. This is something you can do systematically over the period of a week, 2 weeks. You could spend a month, right? I don't know that you need to spend a month, because probably even 3 or 4 days is going to give you a pretty good indication of where your mindset is, especially compared to where you think it is. All right. So the idea of doing an audit, how do you get to know where your mindset is and what your mindset is, what you believe? Well, you have to be able to feel things. That's the good and bad news, right? We have to be able to notice what we're feeling, as in our bodies, emotions, and our thoughts. Perhaps most importantly, at this stage, what are the thoughts that we tell ourselves? What are the thoughts that the little voices whisper? Okay. So as you get to know your mindset, it's really getting to know your thoughts, your patterns of thought, your behaviors, the self-talk. Anyone? Right? So if you are live, I would love to know, right? What are some of the self-talk voices that you've just heard in your brain today? Right? I know that some of the voices that I've heard today are you sure? Is your voice really important enough to share right now? Right? Also, so many things. Okay. So think about, what are these self-talk echoes you've heard today? One of the things that I like to do, and that I do this a lot with my one-on-one coaching clients, is have them set a timer for 2 or 3 times a day. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but it does take a little bit of effort and attention. I'm a tired person. I need a nap, right? Thank you, Melissa, for sharing that. Talk about self-talk, right? So you set a timer on your phone or somewhere where you're going to pay attention to it. And in that moment when your timer goes off, you ask yourself, what is my brain doing right now? What is it thinking about right now? And the more you do that, the more you become an observer of your thoughts, then it's that idea of getting to know it. Holly says, fear that you're in, or Natalie said, sorry, Holly says, moving to a different state would be crazy at this point in my life. Get that out of my head. Natalie says, fear that my intuition might be wrong. This is a common one. Yeah, right? When we doubt ourselves. So that self-talk of doubt. Okay. I would offer that all of those thoughts are rooted in a mindset. They're rooted in a belief or a perspective about your intuition, about your success, right? I'm thinking about Holly's and moving. And also this idea of what success looks like and where you should be. Okay. You have to take a break from the news. I would offer that might actually be a really healthy thought for a lot of us, right? But so true, okay? That thought where, because we keep going in. And so what are those mindsets about? So the more you get to know the thoughts, then you begin to examine, what are you making that thought mean? Okay. And here's where we ask a bunch of why questions. Why is that important? Why does that matter? Why is that so bad? Why might that be so good? Okay. But we peel back the layers until you land on the nugget, which is like the base attitude, the foundation of that belief, right? So this is why sometimes it's helpful to have somebody guide you through that process, because we often have blind spots and we think we've gotten to the foundation, and yet there's more to play with, right? So for instance, when we start to doubt our intuition, or our choices, right? What is that really based on? Perhaps it's based on a fear of safety, of love, of success, right? Whatever that might be. And so really getting to the root. And that's where then you might land on this idea of fixed versus growth, right? This is where I am, this is where I should be, versus I get to cultivate who I am and what I get to be. Okay. So we spend time unearthing, really exploring and auditing, not judging. Okay. So you hear this from me a lot in a lot of different scenarios, but I can't emphasize this enough. When you are auditing, these are not judgments, right? You are bringing awareness to yourself, and you definitely, instead of judgment, you should be celebrating your awareness, that you are giving yourself permission to either move slowly enough or be still enough with yourself, that you're giving yourself permission to get to know these aspects of you. Now, it's also really worth auditing where you think your mindset is, right? So if you have an affirmation or a mantra practice or something that you repeat to yourself or write in your journal every day, an intention even, then noticing, right, what are the small little voices, the little whispers that show up? These are the things that we use to diminish ourselves. These are the things, the little seeds of doubt, right? It also shows up in our actions. Are our actions consistent with where we think our mindset is? So, for instance, if you have a mindset or a belief, right, that you follow your intuition, that your intuition is important, even, okay? But then you never listen to it, right? Your actions are absolutely contrary to that, then you know there's you're out of alignment, right? You're talking the talk, but not walking the walk, right? So that's another place to audit, to really look at those places where we say something, and then how do we follow through with that? Or do we follow through with that? Those whispers are important. That self-talk is important. So you spend some time auditing, right? This could be in your journal in the morning. It could be throughout the day if you set a little timer on your phone or on a device. It could be at any time, but giving yourself permission to get really curious about where your mind spends its time and what your patterns of thought are based on, right? So there's the what you're thinking about, and then the why does that matter? Okay, so that's how I would offer this idea of an audit. Then we have this opportunity. Well, let me pause. Do you have any questions or thoughts about that? Right? Because it's kind of big stuff. It's not rocket science, and yet we think that once we've dialed in on something and gotten good at it even, that then we're set for life. I have bad news. It's not how it works. It's a little bit like muscles in our bodies. Mindset requires, and I'm going to use that word intentionally, requires consistent and frequent monitoring and attunement, right? Choosing over and over and over again, because it's really easy to think we're dialed in and then slowly veer off, and then veer off a little bit more, and suddenly you realize you're going in the exact opposite direction. This is great. It removes guilt, right? So yes, tell me more about that idea that it removes guilt, because I think that's really, really important to focus on. That this is a practice, this is a gift, an exploration you give yourself, right? If you think about the fact that your mindset is a system of wiring that has been wired for the entire length of your life, over and over again, you have collected evidence to create the mindset that you have now. So it is going to take time to dismantle that. It takes effort, it takes attention, it takes intention, and it takes time. I would love to tell you that it's as easy as flipping a switch. It is not. Now, tweaking things, when we get there, I will suggest can be like flipping a switch, because once you get dialed in to a system, a foundation of knowing what's important to you and how you want to proceed with your mindset, and you build that foundation, that's where the time is spent, right? Building that foundation. Once you have that foundation built, then it's easier to make course corrections and little tweaks. And it's like flipping a switch. You open up this whole new possibility, and then comes the work of integrating that, of making that sustainable and long-term, right? So this is a lot of the work that we do in the Thrive Circle. These are the types of things that we'll be exploring in terms of this foundation of nurturing and nourishing your roots at the Sunrise in Your Pocket live retreat, right? Okay, so you've audited, you've spent time there. So what I would love for you to do, just for a moment, let's take like a minute to just jot yourself down some notes. And if you have Post-it notes, scrap paper, if you have a journal, fabulous. If not, just whatever you have available. Kleenex, no, Kleenex is hard to write on. Let's see, all my life I've been engaged in social justice issues, but recently it's activated your epilepsy. Oh my goodness, was feeling guilty for taking a break, for looking out for myself. Yes. Okay, so let's speak to this. I was reading, and I want to find the source and share it with you. There are different types of roles for engagement in social justice. And each one of those roles is important, right? Some people, for instance, their role is on the front line. Other people, though, it's going to be a guide or a healer. And then there's everything in between, right? And what I would offer is that none of those roles, we can't be successful in any of those roles or in anything that we do in our lives if we are not nurturing and nourishing us first. And, right, it's that idea of really resetting, coming back to your center. Okay, what makes you uniquely you? Are there things that we can grow and cultivate and do? Yes. But those parts of you, so that you can be centered and then show up for others. So I am so, so glad that you took a break and gave yourself that opportunity, because that's what makes you stronger, right? And the mindset, the perspective of always needing to be doing is what can get us into trouble, right? So the mindset there might be that productivity, right, more important than anything else, more important than self-care. And you guys know I don't love that term, nurturing and nourishing. More important, right? Thriving has to be built on you being strong on the inside so that the outsides can be strong. And that's where our mindset comes in, at really paying attention to what those voices, those echoes, those choruses are that we tell ourselves. All right. So I'd love to know if you jot down any other thoughts. What are the mindsets that you think are showing up for you? The perspectives, the perceptions, the attitudes, right? And just start getting to them. And if you feel comfortable, I'd love it if you were daring and shared it in the comments. Okay. And as you're doing that, we'll begin to think about, so how do you start tweaking? How do you start choosing your mindset rather than letting it choose you? Because your brain, left to its own devices, will go to the thing that protects you. And the things that protect you are these stories that tell you to stay inside, to stay small, to kind of hide, right? To put up a wall. And there may be times where that's appropriate, but I would offer that to thrive, that's not where we want to spend the bulk of our time. And we want to be empowered enough by being centered to then discern which mindset we want to pay attention to. Okay. So this idea of tweaking your mindset is really a place of empowerment and discernment. So there are a few different ways you can tweak your mindset. There's reframing, right? If you think about thought work and playing with your thoughts, there's this idea of reframing. Now, reframing can be as simple as, well, let me backtrack. The practice of reframing for me is a practice of awareness. It does not necessarily mean that your reframed thought is going to be the thought that you choose to accept. Okay? So, reframing is looking for other possibilities. So, for instance, turning something to the opposite. So, I believe that my success, where I am now, is where I'm going to be, for instance. Reframing that would be, where I am now is not where I'm going to be. Okay, it's not a perfect example, but it's one. So this idea of simply switching it to the opposite, and then you can look for evidence where that might be true or truer than the original thought. Okay, if you think about it in your body, right? So if your mindset is that your body is not strong, or that you are a tired person, okay, and you switch that to the opposite, it would be, so from, instead of I am not strong, I am strong. Well, you might be like, well, yes, I can think of exactly, 3, 4, 5 examples where I have been strong. And so maybe that helps you attune to this other possibility. The trick is, though, that sometimes when we reframe, we go from one extreme to the other. And that gap between them is sizable. And to say that you're going to go from here to here, like flipping a switch, is unrealistic. So I love, there's a coach by the name of Carol Lowenthal who talks about ladder thoughts. So she invites you to think about a ladder, right? And a ladder has rungs. And on the bottom rung is the initial thought, that initial mindset, that perspective. At the very top rung is the new mindset that you want to attain, okay, or attune to. And then in between are the little rungs, the step ups. So for instance, from I am not strong to I am strong might be, I am open to the possibility that I am strong, right? That might be easier to sink your teeth into, okay? And so you start being open to possibilities and you practice that. And then you maybe go up another rung and you practice that. And then you may not realize that you may not need rung 3, 4, 5, that you can jump automatically to the very top, right? As you continue practicing. But I wanted to share that because I think that that can be a really powerful reminder and a place of grace, because I think sometimes these practices, I often say, are we can use them as weapons of mass self-destruction when we were like, but I'm trying all these things and they're not working, and then you judge yourself. Melissa says, I get by financially. I don't live in poverty or in abundance, but truly I do live in financial abundance. Just don't see it, feel it, right? So yes, and a lot of the stems, what you learned growing up, we have just enough. If we want it, we can have it, but never extra, okay? Money mindset, you guys, runs deep into the roots of our families. So yes, right, that idea. And so then that's a place, Melissa, for instance, for abundance and deciding why that's important to you and what that means to you. And then practicing. So here's the thing, practicing feeling it. We have to be able to practice, especially with abundance, receiving it. Because if it's always been hard for us to receive, or if we've always been told, no, that's not what we do, then we push it away, sometimes when it's right in front of us, either by ignoring it or by resisting it. And so that's where then we really get to practice receiving it. And we start with from ourselves, okay? So there's reframing and these ladder thoughts. Then there's also just tweaking, right? And the tweaks can be small. So noticing the mindsets, the attitudes, the perspectives that you have that you think are actually pretty solid or that feel pretty good. And then really examining, okay, but could that be stronger? Could I be more rooted in that? So I'm going to give you an example. If you've been hanging out with me for any length of time, probably for the last year, I've been talking about a nothing to lose mindset, right? That doesn't sound bad. And if I think about in my life, a lot of my big pivots have come from what I called nothing to lose moments, where I did something because I had no expectations around it and I had nothing to lose. Or I told myself, I believed, right, that I was just showing up, no expectations of outcomes. And some of the biggest moments of my life have evolved unknowingly from little shifts that happened in those moments. So that's a pretty fabulous mindset, right? Got nothing to lose. Okay, except that having nothing, saying to myself, nothing to lose, there's an underlying feeling of having something to lose. Right? So it may seem like it's semantics, it's so subtle, but the idea of having nothing to lose is rooted in a belief that, oh, actually I have everything to lose. Right? That I can do this now, but in my other moments, there's a whole lot to lose. So my word of the year this year was courageous. And as I've been playing with it for the last, what month are we in? 6? 6 months. Whew. In 6 months. Here we go. New decade, all the things. As I played with that idea of nothing to lose, and I literally, in my Thrive journal, I've got, there are pages or weeks where I was like, all right, 10 nothing to lose actions. Not a bad thing, right? But as I started playing with it, and I went, wait a minute, what if it was actually about having everything to gain? Do you notice the switch in that? From nothing to lose, I have nothing to lose, to I have everything to gain. So this is what I'm talking about, a subtle tweak, right? To me, I have everything to gain. It makes me stand up stronger, makes my heart go, because it like opens the door on possibility, as opposed to nothing to lose. It, as I've thought about it, can feel a little bit like, but am I sure? Okay, a little bit more inward, but everything to gain to me feels expansive and empowered. And so I made that shift in writing out my intention each week. And instead of I, courageously show up with a nothing to lose mindset, it now says, I courageously embody having everything to gain. That was like flipping a switch for me. Because the minute that I started realizing I have everything to gain, and I can apply this to so many parts of my life, getting up at 5:30 in the morning to do my brain dumps and meditations, getting on my Peloton bike, right? Showing up to do Facebook Lives, right? There's a difference between as I've played with it, I have nothing to lose and I have everything to gain. And you all know that I'm not somebody who likes to do things from outcome based on expectations of outcomes. So this actually took some thinking for me, because the gaining isn't necessarily something that's an outcome. It was an energetic gaining. It was a feeling, right? That sense of expansion, that sense of freedom, that sense of courageousness, of curiosity. Okay, so this is an example of a really subtle tweak that you can make in just looking at the language you're using with yourself, and where can you up level it or tweak it just a little bit. So I would love to know if you all have any thoughts that we could play with about this, because you might just have a mindset, and you can play, we can use your intentions, your affirmations, whatever it is, the things you tell yourself. And as I sip my tea and you think about that and put it in the comments, and then we can play with it, almost like some hot seat coaching. I want to point out that I've been using mindset interchangeably kind of with thoughts. And there is a difference, right, between the thoughts we tell ourselves and our mindset. The mindset is really the pervasive, the foundational element of where all of our thoughts come from. Okay. And yet, I think that the more we see our thoughts as part of our mindset, the more we can get dialed in, right? So we get closer in to that awareness of where we're spending that time and that energy in our thinking. So yes, they are different. And yet I would offer that the more we can see our thought patterns as what makes up our mindset, then the more we start to pay attention to all that we are being framed by. Does that make sense? Okay, let's see. So as you start to think about tweaking, up leveling, amplifying, charging up, right? Whatever that is for your mindset, there are some ways that if you're not sure how to do this, I would invite you to consider, right? First of all, get out of your head. Oops, did I say that strongly? Let me say that again more gently. Please get out of your head. No, as I'm saying, we need to get to know our thoughts. Your truest, most empowered mindset will not come from your head. It will come from your heart. It will come from your inner wisdom, your inner strength, because your brain will fight against it. So you can't really think your way into that. Joyce, no worries, you're here, and then you will be able to go back and watch the beginning if you so choose, which I hope you do, because I think it's been pretty fabulous. So Joyce, we are just talking about, tweaking and up-leveling our mindsets. So the place to do that is not from your brain, it's from your heart. And you can do that by being creative. You can do that by going out into nature, by listening to music, by dancing. Let's see. Yay, will do. I'm so glad. Right there, frankly, so what's funny is I had been playing, if I go back and look at my journal with this idea of I have everything to gain for, let's say, I'm going to say a month. Okay. And then last week, I was on my Peloton bike, and one of the instructors, Christine Dercole, talked about, a lot of people get on the bike to lose weight. But what if you could think about it as what you have to gain? And I was like, she's saying the thing, she's saying the thing. And I was reinvigorated, re-inspired to really, really notice how important that was to me. And to me, that was like message from all the places of, yes, you're on the right track. Like, this is so important. And so I think I even shared that out in the newsletter or in the group last week, right? Of what could we gain? So that inspiration for your tweaks, for your up-leveled mindset comes from nature, comes from in your heart. Maybe it comes from reading. So right now, one of the things that a lot of us are doing are seeking out other perspectives, other voices that perhaps or definitely haven't been amplified or highlighted in the past, and reading different perspectives. So the more we read about different perspectives, again, not as judgment, okay, not as comparison, but to just take in, then we are filling ourselves up with possibilities to find what's important to us, to clarify, right? To think. So in yin, when I guide yin yoga, I often say, what would happen or how would it feel to move this way or that? And I'm not talking like big movements. I'm talking like little movements, okay? So the more we expose ourselves to in terms of different perspectives, different personalities, different contexts, the more then we have an opportunity to really discern, okay? I talk a lot about movement being a place of inspiration for your heart and what's important. Some of my, I had to think about some, I was gonna say all, and I'm not gonna say all. I talked about before, so many of my moments and my big pivots in life have come from these places of that nothing to lose idea, right? Which turns out it was everything to gain. A lot of those have been while moving. So when you move your body, you're kind of getting out of your head, or we are invited to get out of our heads. And so giving yourself those opportunities, whether you're drawing or dancing or walking or running or cycling or swimming, okay? So I just want to offer those nudges in terms of where do you find the energy for those tweaks, okay? So lots and lots of thoughts. I would love to hear what your questions are, what your takeaways are. If you have any thoughts that you want us to play with in terms of tweaking them or up-leveling them, please put them in the comments. As you're doing that, I will mention that the center of you, right, what makes you uniquely you, is the part of you that we want to nurture and nourish so that you can thrive no matter what. When you get dialed in to the mindset that will fuel you, that will nurture and nourish you, that's where you get to thrive no matter what is happening in the world, in your life, in the community. Okay. I don't diminish at all the tragic things that are happening in this country right now. Okay. They're atrocious. And yet, I believe in the and. Okay. So just getting by is constantly scrolling on Facebook or Instagram and reading all the news. Thriving is scrolling when you choose to scroll, taking in the information, and nurturing and nourishing yourself. Okay. The and, doing one, does not have to be mutually exclusive of the other. Okay. So when you get dialed in to your mindset, you have an opportunity to choose to thrive no matter what's happening. It doesn't mean that you're not empathetic or compassionate or that you're going to have hard days. You will. Okay. But it is easier to bring yourself back if you are nurturing and nourishing yourself, which is why I'm going to extend an invitation to you to really seriously consider joining us for the Sunrise in Your Pocket live virtual retreat on Friday evening of June 12th and Saturday the 13th throughout the day. And there's a VIP opportunity on Saturday the 20th for the summer solstice. At least one of you that's here today is joining us, which I'm thrilled about. But these are going to be, I say 2 days, it's not really 2 days. It's Friday night from 6:30 to 8:30, where we're going to be grooving, dancing with master facilitator Heather Winia. And this is by design to get us out of our head, to shake the old stuff out. And I've been talking about this virtual retreat as a reset, as like a do-over. And you can look at it that way, but it's also a way to shake out the stagnation so that you can do better for you, do better for others, do better for thriving, to create ripples of thriving. Right. So we're going to really be spending Friday night and then Saturday thinking about what are the walls that you've put up in your own way or that you felt have been up in your way, right? Those stumbling blocks around choosing your mindset, around choosing to thrive, and then turning those walls into doors of possibility. And so in the morning, we'll really be looking at those walls and what would it take to make them doors. And then in the afternoon, we'll be beginning to see the possibilities in the doors. And then notice what happens when we step through the door and create a new narrative for what that looks like and feels like so that you can continue to walk through doors instead of stumble into walls. And I believe that there's never been a more important time to do this. So if you're interested, please reach out. You can leave a comment here. You can send me a message. The information is also up on my website, elenasanino.com. And it's / Sunrise in Your Pocket Live with a bunch of hyphens. So just if you look at events, you'll see it. The cost of the tickets is $180 for that Friday night and Saturday segment, and it's $300 if you want to join us for the summer solstice VIP event, where we will be practicing more yin yoga. We'll have a summer solstice fire ritual, and we will be led through a full voice training to really tap into the power of all of those different elements of our voice with the marvelous and incredible Barbara McAfee. Everybody is going to get a Thriving Toolkit in the mail with the Thrive Journal, and some goodies to help you integrate your thriving. I'm really excited about some of the goodies, I'm not gonna lie. So if you have questions, please reach out. Registration is still open. It's an incredible group that has already joined in and is starting to get excited. But please know that I would be delighted and love to have you there. And that I think the benefits of taking this time to really nurture and nourish yourself and create a narrative that you are in control is a strong word, but that you get to navigate, that you get to choose, is the thing that many of us need to make the rest of this year and the start of this decade what we want it to be, to cultivate, right, our growth and transformation, rather than assume that it's stagnant and that this year is just what it is. So please, please consider joining me. I will put a link in the comments for all the details, but know that I'd be delighted to have you. So let's see, are there any other questions or thoughts about mindset and all the things, and or other questions that you might have right now? Let's see, I'm going to make sure I can see things. Okay. Mindset is important work. And as I mentioned before, it's not work that you just do once a month or once a year. Once a week is pretty good. If you can play with noticing and attuning your mindset once a week, that's a really good place to start. If you can do it every day, that's awesome. And what I mean by that is, once you've audited, once you've tweaked and up-leveled, then we continue to attune and embody. Holly says, thank you. Planning on adding in a few minutes of audit to your daily practice. Yes, please let me know how it goes. And that's a perfect way to integrate it, Holly, right? Adding in just a few minutes of audit, not judgment time, just audit, awareness. Where have you been spending that mental energy? Where has your mindset been? How has it been showing up? So that you can course correct and make those shifts as you go. Okay, the more that you practice with this, the easier isn't exactly true. The faster you will catch yourself. It is easier to catch yourself before you fall down the perpetual rabbit hole. Okay, so these are practices to bring yourself back to over and over and over again. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the more you start realizing how you can make these subtle tweaks, right? Like my nothing to lose to everything to gain. Any other questions or thoughts, celebrations of, hey, like I already have this mindset practice and it's awesome. Share that too, because, right, what works for you might just work for somebody else. It might not, but it also might inspire them to think of something on their own. So please, please share. You can come back and share things in this comment thread as you have new thoughts, as you explore, as you try things. I will come back and read all the things. It has been really, really delightful to spend this midday on a Wednesday with you all. I am just incredibly grateful that you took this time for yourselves to be here, whether you are watching live or whether you are watching later on. Thank you for that. I know there's a lot of really important things to be doing right now, and I will be continuing to share resources of voices that I think are highlighting powerful words. But please know that this time that you can spend paying attention to your mindset goes into the foundation that you are building for all the things. And so this is a gift you can give yourself. Let me know. You are so welcome. Thank you for being here, everybody. Have a fabulous rest of your day and the rest of your week. I'll be here if you have any questions. Bye for now.